Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's April 26th, 2017 live stream edition of the Little Guys Home Technology Podcast. It is sponsored by AudioQuest, Integra, and Golden Ear, three companies dedicated to high-performance audio and getting you the best sound possible. I'm David.
And I'm Evie, and we're excited to be bringing you this live stream. The Little Guys is located at 19031 South Old LaGrange Road in Mokina, where Mokina meets I-80. South of Orland, west of Tinley, east of Frankfort, New Lenox, right there in the middle. It's right off of I-80.
You're getting really good at this.
Exit I-80 south, and you just make a left at 191st Street, which would be the second light.
Exit LaGrange South, off of I-80.
Okay. All right, well, but it's the second light is 191st, and you turn left, and then you almost immediately turn left right between the Denny's and the White Castle, and we're right there.
Easy to find, easy to get to. And we're always available at info@thelittleguys.com. You can email us anytime and call the store, 708-754-8844.
The store is open Monday through Thursday from 10 until 6, Friday and Saturday from 10 until 5, and we're closed on Sundays.
There you go. And I know we've been talking about it forever, but I will tell you that the products section of the website is actually up and live. It still needs a few edits, so don't get mad at me if something's a little bit wrong, if you could find a mistake, although I don't think you will. But if you do, because we're still finalizing a few things, but it is up and live, and you can actually see shop products on the website. There's most of the stuff is just available in store, but at least you can see all the Integra receivers and the AudioQuest cables.
The things that we carry, right.
And the things that we carry. There's a lot of it on there. Not everything's on there yet. We haven't got all the brands loaded. We're still working on some of them, but there's a lot of stuff there and a lot of things to look at. A lot of cool stuff. So it's under the little shop heading at the top. So
is it a little shop heading?
It is little. It's kind of small. I mean, we haven't done the big broadcast yet because we're not.
We're not fully up and running, right. This is a soft
opening. Today's show is going to be mostly inquiries from listeners and customers who come into the store. And we're going to summarize them because we don't want to read you the whole email or whatever. But even though we're constantly being told how wonderful we are, we didn't think we would bore you with that on a repeated basis. But I should. This happened the other day where a gentleman came up to the front counter and he said to me, my remote, I push the buttons and sometimes my remote doesn't work. It doesn't do those functions, or I have to push it a bunch of times to get it to function. And he hands me a remote for a U-verse. And I sort of recognized the guy, and I thought we did a whole system for him and that kind of thing. And I said, well, describe what's happening. He says, well, I like the 5 button or the channel up button. Like, it doesn't seem to want to do what it's supposed to do. And I go, well, is there a sensor in the room? Are you aiming right at the receiver? That kind of thing. And then I looked up his information and I realized he has a Control 4 system.
Okay.
And I'm like, wait a minute, why is he using this U-verse remote? This makes absolutely no sense at all. What is the reason? So I said, why are you using this U-verse remote? Why aren't you using your Control 4 remote? Well, the guy told me that I had to use 2 remotes now. And I'm thinking, hopefully not one of our guys, because there's no way our guys would tell you that. But who knows? So I said, our guys told you that? He goes, no, the guy from U-verse. I go, wait a minute. Did you recently add U-verse to your system? And you had something before, like Comcast or DirecTV? And he goes, yeah, we switched to U-verse. And I go, how long ago? He said, well, a few months ago. And I go, well, why didn't you call us? So that we could fix your Control 4 system, reprogram it for the U-verse, and then you'd still only have to use the 1 remote. Well, the guy told me I needed 2. And I go, well, because he didn't understand the Control 4 thing that he programmed. He didn't know how it worked.
Why did they always believe those guys?
Well, he was making it so it would work. Right? I mean, the guy was trying to make it so that it would just work and he could leave.
All right.
Well, he wanted to leave, so he said, look, just use this remote. So we were at the front counter. We talked for a little while. We went over it. And it turns out it's not a bad idea. We're going to reprogram it, obviously, for the U-verse. But it's not a bad idea that we go out there anyway and update. There's been some updates since he's last had his Control 4 looked at, which is about 2 years or whatever. So the time has come. But you would think that if somebody was switching from one service to another, you would call us and say, but he didn't. So it had me confused for a little while.
I think it doesn't cross people's minds.
Yeah.
I mean, this remote I have works my system. Anything new I put into the system, it should work it.
Right.
And but the remote is programmed to work with specific items.
Right. So we have to just reprogram it and set it up, and he'll be fine. So he was thrilled. He loved it. He said, "Oh my God, I don't know where my brain froze. Why I didn't think about it. I mean, I should have called you guys right away." So. All right, no big deal. But it happens. So if you change services and you have a universal remote or a Control4 system or a Savant system or a system that that we put in or someone's put in, it can be reprogrammed for whatever the new one is. You don't have to all of a sudden switch to 2 remote controls.
Right. But a word of advice, we can set up your system so you use one remote for everything. Keep the remotes that came with each item, the TV remote, the cable box or DirecTV remote, the receiver remote. Keep all of those somewhere. You can take the batteries out of them and put them on the side so they don't corrode or whatever, but just keep them
Just
somewhere
a good idea
because
to hang on.
sometimes, and it always happens when we're closed, it'll happen on a Sunday, something happens to the remote and you're just not going to not watch TV or not listen to music.
Yeah, you should be able to access it.
You should be able to access those things with the original remote. It's just will be cumbersome.
Great point.
But you'll be able to do it.
All right, so here's when we get a lot. Not as much anymore because of the control systems, but with the universal remotes, even the ones that we originally put in many years ago, where we weren't doing that many that were RF or radio frequency. I hit the button. You told me I only had to hit one button to get everything to turn on and go to where it's supposed to go. Mm-hmm. And I hit the button, and only half the things turn on, or half the things go to where they're supposed to go, or whatever it is. And you say to the customer, so you hit the button, and then you did what? Well, I turned around, I looked up, I moved my remote in a different direction, I changed whatever, and I said, so you don't have radio frequency. You don't have an RF adapter on your remote. And this remote is actually emitting 10 different commands. But it's not doing it in an eighth of a second.
Right.
It takes a few seconds, and you have to keep the remote aimed at the components. Right? Now we can convert it to RF and make it so that you don't have to do that anymore. And then it's radio frequency, and you can aim it at the sky, you can aim it at the ground, you can put it behind your pillow. I mean, you can do whatever you want with it. It doesn't matter. It's just going to send out the radio frequency and get to the components.
Right. So if you're an impatient sort of person,
for sure, you should
like my husband here, just wants to flick the remote in the air, just like barely hit the button. You need to have the RF control, and it is a pleasure.
And it's only the case.
You don't have to sit up and aim the remote at stuff. And
if you have Savant or you have Control4 that are using the network for to interact with the components, it's completely different. But when you have a universal remote or some other brand remote that is not on radio frequency, it's pretty important that you keep the thing aimed at the components that it's going at. I don't think I would in the last 4 years, I don't think we've sold more than 1 or 2 remotes that didn't have radio frequency. I mean, we put RF with everything, but there are some people who just didn't want it, and because it does cost a little bit more money to get the RF parts.
Right. It can always be added later, though.
That's it. Absolutely. And when it's we're talking about with remotes that we have programmed, there are some kind of generic remotes out there that they do the the multiple commands. They'll do that, but they don't put enough space in between certain ones before they tell it to do it. So that it'll tell the TV to turn on and go to an input, but the TV needs a couple of seconds, or not seconds, but a half of a second to turn on before it's ready to switch inputs.
Right.
So you got to be real careful when you have one of those kind of generic Logitech or one of those kind of remote control things.
So do you have the ability with those to put that extra
There are some that you can and some that you can't, and some are just downloaded however they are, and that's it, and you're stuck. That's the downside to using internet remote controls like that. So, and whatever. We told you not to get that anyway. Don't get that.
Right. We did.
All right. Do you have one, Ev?
I have a lot of them. I like this one. I heard that 8K is coming soon. Why should I buy a 4K
That's my
TV?
favorite. let's see, for the next 8 years or 7 years or whatever it takes before 8K even maybe touches the fringe of the consumer world, you could be enjoying a 4K television. Maybe that would be one of the reasons. The broadcasters and the recording studios and the rest have not all switched to 4K yet. They're just getting up to the spot where the 4K cameras are coming in.
Right.
Other things are coming in. There's no over-the-air. Well, I shouldn't say no. There's very limited over-the-air broadcast of 4K in test sites, around the country. That kind of a thing. It's not an everyday standard yet. I will tell you that I have seen an 8K picture. I at this point now, maybe it'll change when 8K becomes a reality. I don't know what else it could do. Well, I don't know how it could be any better.
Right,
or
the
could
people
be any
could
different.
crawl out of the screen, maybe.
Right, I don't know. It's so good now, and I really think the 8K thing would only come into play when you're dealing with screens that are 90 and 100 and 150 and 200 inches. When you're dealing with giant screens like that, I could see where maybe that could help a lot. But in TVs that we're watching now, and 4K has raised the height, the standard size now. Where everybody used to have a 32 or a 43 or 42, now the standard size is 65. There's still plenty of 55s and the rest, but 65 is kind of where people are getting into it now, and 75s are becoming more prevalent as well. So I just don't know where the 8K thing comes into play long term. It'll be interesting to see, but it really is at least 3 to 4 years away before it even becomes a more talked about concept.
Right. So, the movie studios have millions of dollars to blow on 4K cameras. They can film everything in 4K, and they all the TV stations across the nation, probably across the world, are still recovering from, first of all, the digital transition.
HDTV.
They had to pay millions and millions of dollars to upgrade all their stuff and to make it digital. And maybe they're just starting to think about, well, maybe 4K is something we should think about.
It's an inevitable change. It is going to happen. It is going to be commonplace. We will take 4K for granted. It's hard to believe, but we will take 4K for granted at some point. The pictures, it's scary good. I mean, it's freaky sometimes watching it, that it seems so real or so lifelike. It's incredible, especially on a good 4K set. Something with good video processing and the rest. I mean, it is exceptional. The reason I wouldn't wait for 8K or 16K or 800K or whatever's down the road, is because why not watch the best pictures you can watch now? And it'll be quite a while before the other thing really comes into play. I will tell you that every TV we have on display every television that we have on display is 4K. There's not a non-4K TV on display in the building. There are some projectors that aren't 4K, but there's not any televisions that aren't 4K. I mean, at this point, for $7.99, you can have a 43-inch or 50, actually less than $7.99 for a 43-inch. You can get, it's so inexpensive to have 4K for a good one, even like a Sony XPR, that why wouldn't you? I will tell you that all the effort is being put in to the 55, 65, 75 size ranges. Right. They're building cheaper 43s typically. There's not a premium 43 out there right now. There will be at some point, but right now there's a good one, but there's not like an unbelievably phenomenal 43 or whatever that's out there. So just the way it's going to be for a while. All right, I got one. My pictures keeps digitizing while I'm watching a Blu-ray. What could cause this? The simple answer is 95% of the time, assuming that the Blu-ray player isn't broke, 95% of the time, it's the cable.
Yep.
It's absolutely the HDMI cable going between the unit and the receiver, or the unit and the television.
So just run out to Home Depot and get a new one.
And you'll have the exact same result you had with the other one. Because the first thing someone who calls on the phone with this situation, it happens a lot, says is, well, I got a new HDMI cable. And I go, how much was it? Well, it was $10. And I go, well, where did you get it from? What, unless it was a used one from a friend or something, and it was like an Audio Quest or a better Monster, or a better premium cable. No, it was, not Home Depot sometimes Best Buy, sometimes Kmart. Right. I mean, they just go buy an HDMI cable. The fact is, there's huge differences in HDMI cables. There's huge differences in the performance, and a crappy one can cause those issues.
Yes.
That is one of the symptoms of a bad cable, or not just a defective cable, but a cheaper quality cable. Especially when you're using better Blu-rays with HDR and high performance video. The better the cable, you absolutely can see the difference in the picture.
There's no question.
And the standard isn't the standard. And the longer lengths, it's even more critical. As you get up to 9 feet and 15 feet and 21 feet, 25 feet. I mean, it becomes even more important to have a premium cable, right? All right, so that's that one. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's little digital packets that get lost along the way.
Yeah, they get lost, or pushed to the side.
Right, and the longer the cable, if the path is not sufficient, then they can, there's flying off into the ether.
We talked a lot last week about the new Sony OLED televisions.
Yes.
And we mentioned that LG panels are being used, but somebody emailed me afterwards and said their friends told them that the Sony OLED is just last year's LG television, and that could not be farther from the truth. It is an LG panel. Yes, this year's, last year's, doesn't matter. It's an LG panel. The panel itself is from LG, okay? But the video processing and the guts of the television come from Sony. And it's the Extreme 1 chip that makes the difference. That's where the processing is taking place. That's where the color is being interpreted. That's where it's all happening. And having the combination of a good LG display panel, which is fine, and the even better Sony processing. Now that doesn't make the LG sets not good. The LG sets are fine. Nobody's picking on LG. They still make a good OLED television. They made a good one last year. They have good ones this year. They have even more premium versions this year. They're even brighter this year than they were last year. But the fact is the processing guts, the part that create the picture and make the picture, are Sony's own. And frankly, I think they do it better than anyone.
Yeah, actually, there's when you say panel, people think the entire TV.
Right.
There are a lot of video companies who use each other's panels. It depends on who's got a factory up and running, and but it's really just, it's not the guts.
A long time ago, I was in Korea at LG in their design center, and sitting on the desk in this design center is a Sony 23-inch monitor. Well, at least it looked exactly like a Sony 23-inch LCD television that we were selling, that everyone was excited to have because it was one of the first ones ever. And I said to the designer, I said, "Why are you using a Sony TV? What would make you use a Sony television on your LG? You shouldn't have a Sony television on your desk or whatever, or Sony monitor on your desk." And she goes, "This is an LG monitor. We made this. We made this style of monitor and this frame and this chassis. We made this for Sony. They put it into their TV. We never did. We just used it on our monitors. But they put it into one of their TVs, which became one of the most popular models ever. And it kind of clicked in my head. These guys, they do buy parts and stuff back and forth from each other, and try to get some economy of scale. And it makes sense. It totally makes sense. So, and that doesn't mean LG makes Sony, right? That's not how it works. Or Vizio makes Sony. That was the old rumor, remember?
Right.
Vizio makes Sony. It is conceivable that when Sony was in the promotional TV business, which they are not anymore, when they were in the promotional TV business, they might have bought a display or a case from a company like Vizio or whatever, because they needed to have the lowest bid for one of the big companies they were dealing with, and they had a cheaper one than they could make themselves. It's possible, but that doesn't mean that Vizio made Sony or that kind of concept or whatever.
Correct.
Because people do take it out to the next extreme kind of thing. One of the other ones we get all the time is, I live in a condo and my neighbor keeps complaining about the bass from my sub. Is there anything I can do to make it less annoying for them? And the answer there is yes, too. There are some great isolation feet. Some great feet that you can sit your sub on, regardless of what brand it is. SVS makes some that literally go under the sub and isolate it from the floor, so the floor is no longer vibrating. Now, if you crank up the woofer high enough, and this especially seems to happen with cheaper quality woofers. The cheaper, poorer performing woofers, have such thumpy bass that it's annoying,
right?
Right? But the isolation feet will help keep it in the room and not let it transfer as much through the floor, through the vibration in the floor. So yes, there is a solution, or at least an aid in getting closer to making that neighbor happy.
I mean, if you're blasting your system, the whole building's going to hear it anyway. But if you're listening to normal levels, you're watching television or just listening to some music, not real loud. There's no reason that the neighbors should be listening to.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. I mean, they isolate really well. They do a really good job. I know we ran out of them the other day. I know we were out of them. I know. I thought you said you were going to put some more on order and get some more in.
I did. Wait, did we sell those?
I think so. I don't know.
It's like $50 a set for a set of 4 feet. It's a pretty inexpensive solution.
I put them on a guy's turntable the other day. It was having feedback issues, and I used the AudioQuest feet most of the time, and we were out of the AudioQuest ones. So I said, try these. Take these home and try these or whatever. And he called me back and said, problem solved. So worked. All right, your turn.
Okay. Since you did a turntable one, I'll do a turntable one. I just bought a turntable, but there's no place to connect it on my receiver. What do I do?
So there's no phono input. There's a RCA jack.
Well, no, he said they tried putting it on auxiliary, but they're not getting anything.
They can barely hear anything or whatever. So the reason is, and I will tell you, this is taking a change now, but for about 5 years, 6 years, until about a year ago, most of the receivers didn't have phono sections anymore. They don't have phono preamps built in. In order to get the sound from a cartridge that's mounted on your turntable, the sound goes, the needle vibrates and it creates this thing in the cartridge body, and that sound comes out, but it needs to be boosted. And in order to get that boost, you need a phono preamp, right? And the receivers for a good 5 years, 6 years, a lot of them had no phono sections. Now they're starting to put them back on because vinyl's
made a big comeback.
Big comeback, so they're starting to put them back in.
The funny thing is, the CD came out in, 81, 82?
Yeah.
And it took them until maybe 2005, 2008 to stop putting the phono sections on. And now, vinyl has been making a comeback for just a couple years, and now they're all putting the phono section back on.
The phono section built into most receivers, there are some exceptions, but built into most receivers are just okay. Having a better phono section makes a huge difference in how good your albums can sound.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that you have to buy an $800 or $1,200 or $1,500 phono preamp, although you can. But there's some $169 and $199 phono preamps, especially the ones from NAD, that really do an amazing job. Even one of our diehard sales guys who's really into records and plays them all the time and had been using the phono section on his system at home forever.
Yeah, and he could not believe the difference.
We made him take one home and play with it or whatever, and he said he was freaked, completely freaked that for as little as a couple $100, his system could sound so much better. I mean, really, really, he said it was dynamically better. I mean, you could really tell. So it makes a big difference.
So if you don't have a phono section, no worries. You can get a phono preamp. If you do have a phono section, you might want to try a $169, $199 phono preamp.
Just for better sound.
That'll make it sound better.
All right. One that we don't get that often, but we did get one last week. How can I create a rockin' outdoor system that doesn't anger my neighbors? In other words, what do I do so I can still play some music outside and feel it?
And not having them call the police on me.
So a big part of that is design, and it's aiming the speakers inwards as opposed to outwards, and it's putting them in the right direction. But it's also these new array systems for outdoors spread out the speakers over a much wider area, and so it doesn't have to blast as much because you have more speakers being utilized. So instead of all the sound coming from two speakers that are up against the house and rocking out the whole place so that you can hear it, there's lots of speakers throughout, and you have that subwoofers that are buried in the ground and have this deep, rich bass and really full dynamic high end. There's some systems have more output than others, that's for sure.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, there's definitely some that rock a little more than others. But having multiple speakers really helps, makes a big difference. So it doesn't have to be as loud to be loud.
Right. And when these arrays first came out, they were pretty much made for larger yards, estates, whatever. They were larger, and since then they've come out with super affordable.
Well, the original
arrays
systems were all $6,000, $5,000, $8,000 with the sub or whatever. Today, for as little as about $1,500, you can have the 4 speakers and the sub and seriously great sound.
Yeah,
I mean it's awesome, clear, clean, great imaging, great detail. It just sounds exceptional. So.
Right, and the speakers are not, some big gaudy speakers. Where they look like, the spotlights people have on their houses. That's totally what they look like. Just that little
landscape lights.
Yeah.
That blend in with just about everything. Mm-hmm. So, all right, your turn.
My turn. Oh, this guy says, I'm paying top dollar for Comcast Internet. I'm getting their highest speed or whatever, but I don't feel like it's really working. And Wi-Fi, forget about it. I'm not getting Wi-Fi.
Well, that's a common one that we deal with. Not once a day, probably 2 to 3 times a day. And it's network components. It's picking out the right components for your network. It's not just taking the Comcast box that has the modem and the router and the switch and the wireless access point all built into one unit. Mm-hmm. And typically not located where it should be centrally anyway to get decent Wi-Fi. The right way to do it is to replace that with individual components. A good router. Right, good routers are $700, $800. I guess I would say really good routers are $700-800. Although there's some that are way more money for businesses and stuff. But a really robust router in today's world for $700, $750, $800 in that range is the same as a year ago would have been $1,200 to $1,500. Mm-hmm. And is exceptional. Has a lot of great features, and I don't want to go into the total detail, but a lot of great features, a lot of great things built into it, a lot of flexibility built into it, a lot of monitoring capabilities. Really, really cool piece. But you start with a good router, you add a switch, right, and then to the switch you hook up your wireless access points. Maybe you hook up one other switch near your components so that you can have multiple components hooked up, and that gives you the ability to have really good Wi-Fi throughout the entire house and outside. Sometimes you need an outdoor WAP, wireless access point, and sometimes you can get away with just using the ones inside because they're close enough. Mm-hmm. It just depends on your yard and your home and how it's laid out. I know we're doing a system for a guy this week where we laid out the system, and he's got a very huge home and 4 wireless access points. And he said, no, you're bringing 5 of them with. And we go, oh, no, 4 is really going to be okay. Nope, you're bringing 5. Just in case, maybe there's a spot in the house, I want it to be anywhere I'm at, outside on the porch, wherever, I want perfect Wi-Fi. Okay. We're going to get you the best we can.
So there can also be too many wireless access
now,
points.
Some of you may have done what we just talked about, gotten a router a few years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, gotten a router when you first got your Comcast Internet, right?
Sure.
And it was good enough then. But the speeds have changed, and the capability of the system has changed. So you can now, you need the router that allows that system to perform at the level it has the ability to get that speed out of it.
Right.
That's important. So updating your router, and again, it's not that you have to invest that much in a router. There are some for under $500 that are still good, but my suggestion is it's not a smart place to skimp. It's something you're going to build on for a long, long time, and invest in a good router now, and you'll be able to stay with it for many years to come.
Right, and this doesn't mean that you tell Comcast to go take a hike.
No,
you still need Comcast. You needed them to bring the internet in. After that, we'd be happy to
there are some cases where you have to use their
it.
modem, and we have to bridge off of it,
right?
Because you have phone service or those kind of things.
Right, but we know how to deal with them. They don't know how to deal with us, but we know how to deal with them.
We can typically take care of that part of the issue. The networks. We've talked about this a million times. The networks have become such an integral part of our daily lives. It's become so important, and so many people in the house are using them, and you're using them for so many different things that they need to be more robust. I mean, a good infrastructure is critical.
And there's only more things coming that are going to be.
And frankly, for me, the only thing that you should be doing Wi-Fi is either control. There's sending commands to things to operate, But things that are streaming music, things that are streaming video, those things should all be wired. Now, obviously, if you have a tablet, you have to have Wi-Fi. If you have your phone, you're using Wi-Fi. You're not locked in, on a wire. But for stuff around the house, most of what you're doing, you want wires. And frankly, at this point, it's category 6, 6A / Cat 7, depending on
who's naming
who's
it,
writing the article or whatever it is. But it's a big deal. It's important. And having the extra bandwidth, having the ability to let that signal get through, and guess what? The speeds aren't going to, and the capabilities aren't going to slow down over the next 5 to 10 years.
No,
they're going
to pick up.
You're going to want more. You're going to want it to do more. You don't even know some of the things you're going to want to do yet. They haven't even been created yet for you to do them, right? The Jetsons is here, right? It's not fully Jetsonized yet, but you can talk to the thing and to the box, whether it's Google or the Alexa. You can talk to it. And you can have it do some basic commands. I mean, it's starting to happen, and you need bandwidth. You need functionality in your network to be able to accomplish those things. Really, really important. All right,
and it'll make everyone in your house really happy.
It will. We covered them all.
No, I did have one more.
Oh, you do? See, David.
I just bought a new TV. 4K, by the way. I just bought a new TV. And I'm trying to hook it up to my receiver, and there's no way to hook it up.
So, and even if it does hook up, even if your old receiver had HDMI on it, it might be the HDMI that doesn't allow 4K
to pass
through. So, this is happening a lot now. Where
in this man's case, he did not even.
He just had component video,
right. He did not have HDMI at all.
Don't shoot the messenger, but the answer is you do need a new receiver. And by the way, you want a new receiver.
Yes.
The new surround sounds, you're using Atmos and the process, even if you're not doing Atmos itself, if you're just using regular surround but have the Atmos built into the receiver, that means it has a more advanced processor in it. It's quicker. It just makes surround sound better. The new amplifiers are typically better. There are some exceptions, but are typically better than what some of the old amps were. And the overall performance of the new receivers, and certainly the controllability, the ability to control it via IP or RS-232, as opposed to before putting that little sticky thing on the front and doing it IR. There's a lot better control, a lot better access to the components, and yeah, you do. You're right. You need a new receiver. Had you bought a TV here, we would have brought it up during the process and asked you what your old receiver was and, what are you doing and how you doing it. Could you temporarily hook it up with component video? Yes, you could, but you're not taking advantage of what the TV has the capability of doing. You're not taking advantage of the video that's being broadcast and streamed. You're just not really taking advantage of all the cool stuff that's out there.
Right.
It's better than nothing, but it's not the right way to do it. And receivers today, good receivers start at as little as $799, $800. With all the stuff built into them that you kind of need, and they
they have internet access, they have Bluetooth usually, they're doing
AirPlay
the AirPlay, the current surround settings. Now, back when we started, there was surround sound, and it was great. It is so much better.
It's a whole
today.
different world. It is a whole different world.
Completely different.
Wait till you experience it. So stop in and we'll play it for you. So you can experience it and check it out. The store, by the way, which is located at 190...
Actually, we do have some B-stock receivers.
We do.
That are a huge value. That if you're just like, it's money-wise, you just want to get into it.
If you want to get something for now that maybe doesn't have Atmos but does do all the switching and the other stuff, you have the ability to do that too. For as little as $300.
Yes.
$350. Actually, we have a lot of those floating around. Well, there were a lot. Now there's some. So. All right. So,
get them while they're here.
Thank everybody for listening and tuning in. The store, by the way, 191st and LaGrange Road in Mokina. It's where I-80 meets Mokina, just south of Orland Park. You can check us out at thelittleguys.com. You can look at products at thelittleguys.com under the shop heading. You can email us anytime at info@thelittleguys.com and call the store 708-754-8844. Monday through Thursday, 10 until 6. Friday and Saturday, 10 until 5, closed on Sundays. And stop in at the store. Check the place out. Come in and see what we do. See what we have, for you to experience and to see what some of the new pictures look like. See what some of the new sound is. See what some of the new network capabilities are.
Right. I mean, at our store, you can experience it. It's not like go into a store where there's a bunch of stuff on shelves.
And one little teaser, I want you to keep this in mind for future consideration when you're designing a system and building a system. Imagine if there was such a thing as surge elimination instead of surge protection. What if you could eliminate surges that could access your components instead of just protecting your components from some surges? That's all. That's a tease. All right, we're the little guys. Thank everybody again, and we are
out of here. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.